Good morning, good afternoon, and good day, family. I'm back here on our learning channel here on YouTube. I wanted to talk about Fanon today. So I titled this presentation, Fanon on Fire, His Global Impact on Revolutionary Movements. I gave this presentation back in November in 2023 at Florida A&M at their African Black Psychology Conference. And it's important. It's actually the 14th annual conference. I wanted to make sure I had a chance to speak with the people about this topic of discussion. It's so interesting that so many people have never heard of Frantz Fanon, never seen him, heard of him, know anything about him. But it's important for us to discuss legendary figures and how they impact current day politics, geopolitics. So let's run through this quickly. Talk about Fanon on Fire. So you see this torch right here? I'd like to start it off because there's a quote in his book called Black Skin, White Mask. Oh my goodness, this is what kind of revolutionized my focus on, you know what, I got to get to work. In Black Skin, White Mask, he says, "And so it is not I who make a meaning for myself, but it is the meaning that was already there, pre-existing, waiting for me. It is not out of my bad nigger's misery, my bad nigger's teeth, my bad nigger's hunger, that I will shape a torch with which to burn down the world, but it is the torch that was already there, waiting for that turn in history." That's why I find this kind of powerful, because we all have a role to play. Nobody has all the answers. I'm not saying Frantz Fanon was the man, he's the only one, but he had the words that made you think about what you need to do to make change in your life. So passing the torch. So he passed on the torch to others. I feel like I got a torch, I'm gonna pass on to others. And that's how we gotta think about revolution and change. Passing the torch. Don't let it get extinguished. I just showed you the image of the book that I have called Black Skin, White Mask. Excited. I got it for $1.25 back in the day. But when you look at other countries, this is the Portuguese version. Now in Brazil, it's not a strong, it's a strong African presence, but the caricatures, the way that they look at black people is not positive. And so here you have all these like Mammy and Step and Fetch It and negative views of what black people are on this book that isn't really what Frantz Fanon's talking about. Now, he's a black psychiatrist. He's trying to get into the mindset. So in my book, Black Skin, White Mask. So you understand that you may think that you're black, but you're putting a mask on, acting like you're somebody else. So as a psychiatrist, he was trying to break this down. So it's not like he came up with this by himself, but for us, our learning outcomes for the day, for you to say you learned something from this channel, you will understand the process of opening the mind for a new consciousness. You will be able to interpret Fanon for contemporary times and describe the impact of Fanon on revolutionary movements. Now, as a child growing up on the island of Martinique, he was influenced by some other scholars. So from the French perspective, the African or Black consciousness movement is called negritude. So some of the powerful figures, and two main people that are looked at as the fathers of negritude are Leopold Senghar, you see him with his hands crossed, and then Aimé Césaire. So Leopold Senghar is from Senegal, a French-speaking colony in Africa, and Aimé Césaire is from Martinique, a colony in the islands, colonized by the French. So the French, just like the British, Germans, were all over Africa colonizing countries. So Fanon is also from Martinique, and so he was taught by Aimé Césaire. And interesting, I have a book here, probably very, very hard for you to find, called The African Presence in the Americas. This is actually edited by Owens Moore, strong brother who wrote stuff on, or documentation on his impact in Cuba. But there's an article in here by Aimé Césaire, and they actually have his picture in here, so it was very instrumental that this conference was kind of focused around Aimé Césaire's work. But this book has an article that he wrote, and it is "What is Negritude to Me?" So he describes his understanding of it. And so Fanon is being taught by this person. So beyond those two fathers, we also have from Senegal, Cheikh Anta Diop. You should remember him because he wrote African Origins of Civilization, Myth or Reality. He also wrote Civilization of Barbarism, Pre-Colonial Black Africa. I mean, the Cultural Unity of Africa. I mean, Diop was at the forefront of taking our understanding of African people's presence in the in Kemet. He and Obenga, they were not so much fighting, but presenting to UNESCO, United Nations on Education, and trying to explain to them that look, these Africans in Africa, they were black. So Diop was very influential in you could say the Niggitude movement, although he came not so much as like affluence like Leopold and Amy, but Dr. Diop and Dr. Ibenga, who's still here, he's from the Congo, speaks several languages. He's written books on philosophy. So these authors have led the movement from a French perspective. So therefore, you can understand how Frantz Fanon was kind of growing up because there was an undercurrent about Black consciousness. So Amy Cesar, he was called a man of letters, philosopher, Pan-Africanist, and political activist. So there was a slight challenge, though, with the way Fanon was looking at him because he didn't just see the history as important. He wanted to be more active. So Fanon went ahead and joined the military, believe it or not. So Fanon, as a psychiatrist and activist, he wrote 3 main books: Black Skin, White Mass, Dying Colonialism, and Wretched of the Earth, toward the African Revolution was like a compilation of his articles. He assisted with the Algerian Revolution. Do your research. Talk a little bit about that later on, but do your research. He died at the age of 36. Too young. Too young. So many people have done biographies on Fanon. I had a really good one. I enjoyed reading this. Frantz Fanon, A Spiritual Biography by Patrick Ellen. This provided some real good information. This is an old school one by Irene Genzier. A study on Fanon. So people have done the work. People have done the work to study him. I'm just trying to make it contemporary today. And one of the most powerful books I have, and I'll talk about this later on, is the Frantz Fanon, The Psychology of Oppression. I met Dr. Hussein Buhan in November, and he is still out there in the game doing his work. And there's these other scholars. There's a guy named Nigel Gibson. He's written 3 thick edited texts on Fanon. So Living Fanon, Global Perspectives. Nigel Gibson. Rethinking Fanon by Nigel Gibson. And his other book related to South Africa, it says Fanonian Practices in South Africa. So people have done the work on the brother, and it's just so surprising that you haven't heard of him. You haven't heard of his impact. So Dying Colonialism, that's my copy. Toward the African Revolution, my copy. And The Wretched of the Earth, my copy. You're going to see different versions because his first book was 1957, 52, I think. Black Skin, White Mass. So that was old school, so it's been revised since. First by Grove Press. So he first did it in 1952 in French, and then they did it in 1967, Grove Press English. So Fanon died at a young age. He was influenced, though, by some African leaders like Kwame Nkrumah. Of course, I like to talk about Kwame Nkrumah because he's a fellow grad of Lincoln University. Kwame Nkrumah with school with Thurgood Marshall and Langston was there. Got all these revolutionary folks. So he had an idea of what he wanted Africa to look like. So he goes back to Africa after leaving the Americas, United States, and amongst his several books, one of them was called Africa Must Unite. But during the independence movements, Nkrumah invited Fanon to Ghana. And Fanon presented at the 1958 All-African People's Conference. Man, he lit a fire and explained to people, you have to fight violence with violence. And so for him, he was discussing the impact of, you can't just sit back. He addressed the conference and everybody sat back and started really thinking. To obtain freedom, you just might have to do violence. So when he gave that speech, it changed the nature of how we're thinking about consciousness. So when we say consciousness, we're speaking about how he influenced our minds from years ago, decades ago, to now how we're thinking today. Listen to some of these comments from Black Skin, White Mask. The black man wants to be white. The white man slaves to reach a human level. I want you to pause that and just think of that on yourself about what's happening in the world today. Repeat that one. The black man wants to be white. The white man slaves to reach a human level. Another one. Without a Negro past, without a Negro future, it is impossible for me to live my Negrohood. Not yet white, no longer wholly black, I was damned. You kind of think about W.B. Du Bois and his double consciousness. Another one. A feeling of inferiority? It's the question asking. No, a feeling of non-existence. Sin is Negro as virtue is white. All those white men in a group, guns in their hands, cannot be wrong. I am guilty. I do not know of what, but I know that I am no good. You just think about the way that media kind of puts some images out there. Well, he must have did something wrong. Police brutality, people getting beat down. Well, he must have did something wrong. So that inferiority complex just keeps getting weeded into the mindset. Another one. Little by little, one can observe the young Antillean, the formation and crystallization of an attitude and a way of thinking and seeing that are essentially white. When in school, he has to read stories of savages told by a white man. He always thinks of the Senegalese. Now, the Senegalese, do your research on that on YouTube, how the French exploited the Senegalese soldiers, didn't take care of them properly, but they were like the cannon fodder, put them out on the front lines for fight. When in school, he has to read stories of savages told by a white man. He always thinks of the Senegalese. The Negro lives in Africa. Subjectively, intellectually, the Antillean. So the Antilles is like a part of Martinique. Like you could say the west side of LA or the north side of, let's say, of a city. The Antillean conducts himself like a white man, but he is Negro. That he will learn once he goes to Europe, and when he hears Negroes mentioned, he will recognize that the world includes himself as well as the Senegalese. So basically, he was speaking about people who travel and go abroad, and now you found out, oh yeah, guess what? You're black like the rest of them. So that mindset of people thinking that they're other than they are, black skin, white mask. Another one. The black man wants to be like the white man. For the black man, there is only one destiny, and it is white. Long ago, the black man admitted the unarguable superiority of the white man, and all his efforts are aimed at achieving a white existence. So we see why it's a problem with the school system trying to eliminate anything dealing with studying black or African history. It's trying to wipe your existence out. So it changes the whole scope of how you now appreciate and deal with and going through school. So these passages I'm saying are having an impact on how our minds have been misconstrued and taken away from our self. 3 more. There is no white world. There is no white ethic, any more than there is a white intelligence. There are in every part of the world men who search. I am not a prisoner of history. I should not seek therefore the meaning of my destiny. So for Fanon, that's why he had a struggle with those negritude philosophers and political activists like Amy Cesar. I'm not into that history. The body of history does not determine a single one of my actions. I am my own foundation. So Fanon was trying to stand firm in his youthful life to say, I'm going to fight, not just reading and cover history. Listen to this one. The disaster of the man of color lies in the fact that he was enslaved. The disaster and the inhumanity of the white man lie in the fact that somewhere he has killed man. Yeah, rewind that one again. Because we're dealing with a situation now where there's inhumane killing going on a massive level in wars and individual families and in communities. What's happening? This inhumanity is being pushed. It's like, are these video games causing that? You can kill on the video games, so you think you can go out in the real world and kill other people too? So this last one, it's pretty heavy because it deals with where we are as a people, with middle class society, which is kind of like the buffer. Intellectual alienation is a creation of middle-class society. What I call middle-class society, says Fanon, is any society that becomes rigidified in predetermined forms, forbidding all evolution, all gains, all progress, all discovery. I call middle class a closed society in which life has no taste, in which the air is tainted, in which ideas and men are corrupt. And I think that a man who takes a stand against his death is, in a sense, a revolutionary. That's why they call Fanon a anti-colonial hero, revolutionary. So as we now look at more of his work, I like this one because he says in his Blacks and White Mass, yeah, the tom-tom chatters out the cosmic message we know about the drums in our community. Only the Negro has the capacity to convey it, decipher its meaning, its import. I find it funny because you look at the melanin dominant people there playing the drums and in the safari land and antelopes running, and the drums kind of mess up the melanin recessive person because they can't quite know and vibe with the music. So confused by the loud drums, it says Roy is flushed into the net. So found it interesting in that Black and White Mass is something that was relevant today. And also relevant today is identity issues in France. Because even though they had the Negritude movement, we had a lot of very important historians, historical figures that have been Black in the past, but the colonial mentality just has been pervasive. This article in 2005 talked about minorities are often treated as fake French people. Full French. And Fanon wrote a book called Dying Colonialism, explained that when this colonialism is being dismantled, these machinations concerning relationships between people have to change. So this guy right here, Yazid, has been a French citizen since the day he was born. People ask him, where are you from? As if like he should be coming from somewhere else, like Algeria. So he's not respected in his own land. He has to keep telling people, no, I'm French. That's why it's strange that in America you got white people telling Black people, go back to Africa. Well, where did that white person come from? This doesn't make any sense, but that's what's going on with the French mentality. So the youth, this is back 2005 now, although some things have happened as we go to 2023, but the identity crisis made those youth set the city on fire. So they were burning up cars, all that. They don't have access to jobs. They don't have access to, livelihood. Get the police beating them down. I mean, so people just got tired and basically they fought back. And as you see, that book right there, The Rest of the Earth, that's what Fanon was talking about. And like the damned of the earth, the rest of the earth, the people who have been set aside, but they got to fight back somehow. So Fanon becomes a revolutionary figure. His book has been used for the Black Panthers and their revolution here in the United States. So people all over the world has read Fanon's work to change their mindset. So France is in a crisis, and the kids, they have the same experience as the people here in the United States or other parts of the world where colonization has happened. Just quickly, Michael Mason, a 21-year-old, was born in France to a family that, while originally from the island of Martinique, has lived in France for generations. He is unemployed and homeless. Being Black, like I am, they say it's not a problem, he said, but it is a problem in finding jobs and being considered French, even though I am French. That's why we are making war outside. Did he participate in the riots? Yeah, maybe. But that's the reality. People are frustrated. How do you now deal with this when people aren't being equal in their justice to make things equal for everybody? So again, you see other young people that made a comment. So in 1966, there's a movie called The Battle of Algiers. Go check it out. The Battle of Algiers explains how the African people got their independence from the French, because the Algerian was just a little playground for the French over there in Africa. We can go exploit those little Africans over there and keep our little space over here. And so you have the sisters in the hijabs and in their gear going to the restaurants, putting down a little bag, walk away. Whew. Cafe exploded. So this scared the heck out of the French, the white French people that were there. And so now you got this big battle that's going on. So that's 1966. Well, Fanon, prior to, because he passed in 61, prior to, he was helping out with the Algerians. He joined the military, but got out of the military after getting injured, and then went to, I think, Lyons in France, Paris for his medical degree. And as he's studying, because he had a problem when he was in the military. Black didn't like the white didn't like the Arab didn't like the Jew. I mean, he got all these problems, people not working together. So he started to extrapolate some ideas, and when he went to medical school, he wanted to be a psychiatrist. Thought about dentistry because his brother's going to be a dentist. So he went into psychiatry. And as he's now studying this, he's now trying to help out actually going to Algeria. Actually wanted to go somewhere he could help out the people. But he found out that the French side was really being exploitative, and was not really catering to the needs of the Algerians. So he started devising new techniques, and you can read up on his work on how he devised new techniques to help out the Algerians. And so now he said, you know what? I'm going to help out the Algerians. And that's why there's some conflict today, I guess, about how you honor Fanon as a French person, or Martinique, or an Algerian who went against the French. I mean, so you got politics there. But again, Fanon helped out with the Algerian Revolution. So the first time I got involved or understood Fanon was really in grad school. That's what I'm saying. Many of you may not have heard of him, especially if you had to go to school to study psychology, but just in general, you can pick up his books. One of the most potent books I had was called The Psychology of Oppression by Hussein Buhan. Man, that book was excellent because, I mean, to me, it broke it down, his life and times, how he grew up. It talked about some of the quotes that I just mentioned, how he used psychology as a liberatory tool to help people become mentally liberated. And so when I was down at Morehouse College, I had a sister friend who came down, may her soul rest in peace. She passed away in 2012. Erinette White. She came out and gave a talk on Frantz Fanon, the psychology of oppression. And so it's like, wow, she coming out here talking this revolution. I know I can now start implementing that in the classroom. So I started implementing Frantz Fanon as a component of my courses. But Erinette White, may her soul rest in peace. She actually helped out with some of the women, excuse me, in South Africa, who were some of the freedom fighters, but you hadn't heard of the woman freedom fighter. She was doing research on that. So when I went to the conference at Florida A&M, that's Buhan on the left and Louis King there on your right. And they are monumental figures in Fanon, it's Fanonian psychology, or studying who Fanon is. So Dr. Hussein Buhan, he is the president of the Frantz Fanon University. He's from Somaliland. Strong brother. Really appreciate his work. And Brother Louis King, he's the executive director of the Fanon Research Development Center, and he was in California area, LA area for a while. I think tired now, but strong brother. Got a chance to meet both of them, and I'm just honored because they had the sources and the information about what Fanon was really doing. I mentioned earlier about the black skin, white mask, and so we compare that to W.E.B. Du Bois's double consciousness. Fanon passed away 61, Du Bois 63, so they know there's some overlap somewhere. They had some communications. Fanon was talking to Lumumba. He was talking to Michael Cabral. Fanon was influential to others, and he was, again, in the underground movement trying to get the weaponry and the military know-how to the people in Africa so they could fight colonialism. But Du Bois, in his latter years, went, to Ghana and passed away in Ghana. So he was also good and friendly and cordial with Brother Kwame Nkrumah. So the circles of people protecting one another was there. I don't know if that still happens today, but it should. So the dynamic of studying the mind, which Fanon was a master at, you have others that come along and wrote. Robert Guthrie wrote a book called Even the Rat Was White, a historical view of psychology. Now, he's also deceased, black psychologist, United States. He's deceased, but the book is strong and powerful. It talks about, the version I have, the history of the, Western psychology, but it looks at why, they kind of labeled us as having deficits when the reality is, no, you have a lot of good information on Black people and their progress in this world. And this other book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, that's a Brazilian writer. Talked about this before, but not in this context today about what Fanon was saying about violence. But Paulo Freire in 1970s wrote this book to talk about how people who are being taught to be oppressed, basically people can be continually controlled. But listen to the situation because of the dynamic we have going on in the world when people are fighting back. Listen to this. Freire says, any situation in which A objectively exploits B or hinders his pursuit of self-affirmation is a responsible person, is one of oppression. Such a situation in itself constitutes violence. Without the establishment of a relationship of oppression, violence has already begun. No, excuse me. With the establishment of a relationship of oppression, violence has already begun. Never in history has violence been initiated by the oppressed. How could they be the initiators if they themselves are the result of violence? How could they be the sponsors of something whose objective inauguration called forth their existence as oppressed? There would be no oppressed had there been no prior situation of violence to establish their subjugation. We saw the storylines going on in the media today about the war going over there in Palestine, in Gaza, in Israel. I call that really North Africa. That's what it is. So we discussed some of these ideas or topics already in geopolitics, but a strong figure who had been at the forefront was Walter Rodney. Talked about how Europe underdeveloped Africa. His wife, Pat Rodney, right there, is still running the Walter Rodney Foundation. And if you study Walter Rodney's work, he's a Guyanese writer. He was really hitting hard. And you see Vincent Harding did the introduction to the original version. Vincent Harding wrote a book called There Is a River, The Struggle for Black Freedom in America. Strong book. I think he's out of Colorado area. He actually came down to Atlanta, started the Institute for Black World or something like that. Well, Harding is also mentioning Fanon in his work in the introduction to Rodney's work because you're linking it all together. Once you start knowing these authors, knowing their message, you start to understand how powerful it is. So Walter Rodney was actually assassinated by his own government in Guyana. You believe that? 1980s. Assassinated by his own government because he's trying to organize the people to be together. So Fanon, I think he was taken out too. He died of leukemia at age 36. One of his good partners, Moumi, Moumie. Moumi was, they were meeting in Accra, getting ready to go to Rome, traveling, and Moumi didn't make it back. He was poisoned with something called phthalimide in his drink and died. He was poisoned. Again, a few months later, Fanon dies with leukemia. Come on. Taking us out. So, contemporary backlash and the fires that are still burning from their assessments and analysis. Where would Fanon stand today? We have to ask the question. The current conflict with Francophone countries in self-defense. When we say Francophone, we're speaking of the French-speaking countries in Africa. Mali, Niger, Benin, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, coup upon coup. The Africans there are trying to cut the puppet strings, saying, French, get out. Take your leaders, your titular heads with you. Get out. This is real serious now. Because now you're engaging the colonizer on a war stance. So Burkina Faso, you saw their brother Ibrahim Traoré. You can go look at YouTube and look at the powerful statements he's made about where we stand on protecting our resources and having a just society. I mean, that's what it should have been in the first place, but these Africans were paying debt, just like Haiti, paying debt to the colonizer because you beat their butt. You shouldn't be paying debt because you beat somebody. They should be paying you for all the injustices that have been going on for the past few years. So the Francophone countries, he mentioned Fanon. They read some of his work, so it's having impact on those countries changing their relationship with their former colonizer. Another end here says current conflict with the Palestinian liberation and self-defense. See, the media, whoever controls the narrative of the media is going to strangle what's going to be said. So you're not really hearing what led up to why there is even a problem from October this year, 2023, and what has happened since the decimation of a whole land. So people didn't talk about the inhumane conditions that people were living in. People call it an open air prison. So the attacks on Gaza and then the cowardly attacks by the oppressor on those people. When we say cowardly, because people are saying, well, the people who attacked them first were cowardly. War is war. We already said the situation about violence. Any situation in which A exploits B is already creating violence. And if you're exploiting people, you're already putting them in a bad situation. So if you're going to now do bomb hospitals, bomb kids, and bomb schools, and so Malcolm X said, white man can't fight another guerrilla warfare because it takes heart to fight guerrilla warfare. You got to be on the ground. So yeah, anybody can fly a drone. You saw what happened when one of the past presidents was in place. Yeah, and killed another president in Africa, Muammar Gaddafi. They got rid of Saddam Hussein. They said they got rid of, what's his name? Osama bin Laden. But sometimes people are flying drones and killing people from the confines of their home, flying a drone and killing people. That's cowardly. So we have slanted media attention on really what's going on. And then that's why we have such a divide in our community, because it's really a situation where you got to take a stand. You stand on this side, you stand on that side. You can't stand on the fence because we have people that are being vilified because they're supporting either side. So you have to understand the history behind what happened in that area of the world. Unless we do, and you have plenty of reports. You know, it was a created situation back in 1948. The place was taken from somebody. The whole term Zionism. You can do your research on that. All we're talking about is where would Fanon stand today? I believe he would stand on the side of those people who have been oppressed. There's no possible way he would do any otherwise. He's going to help out the Algerian Revolution. He went across the border and said, let me help out the Algerians, even though he was French. So summary, self-knowledge is the key to mental liberation. You must read some of these books. You must study and learn and expose who the real enemy is. We are geopolitically connected, and we must fortify this solidarity. Whatever's going on in the Francophone countries right now, we got to support that. We got to support cutting the puppet strings. We got to make sure that we understand the powers of Africa and its connections to us developing. The reason why they have you looking at sports and watching all these sports games and looking at sports is they turn you away from Africa. You have to look at all this news and this crazy stuff going on in the the music world and detaching your reality from the continent and the resources. Meanwhile, they're over there exploiting the resources. So we have to remain geopolitically connected. And lastly, keep the torch burning and do not let the flame get extinguished. I mean, think about it. No one's going to tell you about liberation, about how to get self-knowledge. You got to do that yourself. Why would someone who's been oppressing you now want to teach you right? That's why it's a danger with the school system, because if people who've been taught for so long that you're inferior, why can they now put themselves in a situation now to just be happy and say, oh, no, you're not. You're equal to me. That's not going to happen. The whole civil rights movement was about, again, trying to get equal rights, but, everything was slanted and not looking forward to working on equality. You start making equality, you start putting yourself in a situation where it's too competitive. It's about jobs. So if you got people competing with jobs, then you become a threat. And I think that's how many people looked at that are that are melanin dominant, looked as a threat because they're taking away some people's money and jobs, which defines some people. So for you, make your own trail. I say trail because the acronym stands for travel. You cannot understand the world unless you've seen another part of the world. You can't just read that book or just go ahead and look at that video. No, you might need to go yourself. Totally different view. Read. It's not illegal yet. Activate your mind. You can't sit around and wait for something to happen. That's why television is so dangerous. It's just telling you that vision. It's inactive. Got you sitting there passively. No, activate your mind, do something, engage, get that brain stimulated. Investigate alternative worldviews. I'm sharing with you a worldview. This is my cosmology. My cosmology. It may not be the only, it's not either the best, it's not even it's mine. So study some others. Start comparing. Oh, now you have a better assessment of processing things rather than whatever the media is trying to tell you to think. So investigate alternative worldviews. And then look in the mirror and stop waiting for others to change. You know it comes down to you first. If you're not going to make a change, then how can the situation change? Before the situation changes, you must change. So that's what we're saying. So in conclusion, thank you for your attention. Again, just a quick synopsis on a topic that I thought was very important to talk about Frantz Fanon. Much more work to do on him. If you want to get information on me, here you have my contact information. So I would say and leave you here today by saying thank you for visiting the YouTube Learning Channel as we've talked about Frantz Fanon. On fire. Don't let it get extinguished. Peace and love to you.